Good afternoon, everybody. This is the introduction to Microsoft Teams webinar, and just wanted to kick this off quite quickly with a little bit of etiquette. So if you can't hear me, there's a little gear icon in the top right corner. If you click on that, you can change your audio device, and hopefully you'll find the right combination that sort of enables you to hear what's being said. Because it's a live event, all attendees are muted throughout the webinar, but please use the Q&A chat window. Again, in the top right hand corner, you'll see a little question mark with two kind of speech bubbles. If you use that, ask questions throughout. I will try and address those questions as we go, and if I don't manage to get to it as we're going along, there'll be time at the end when I'll sort of circle back and pick up the questions I haven't answered. The webinar will be recorded. You will get a link afterwards, so you can then go and re-watch the webinar in all its glory for up to 30 days afterwards. So who am I? I'm Mike Owen. I'm the head of business productivity at Circyl. You can reach me on the sort of various contact details that are on screen. And Circyl, we are a Microsoft partner. We're a subsidiary of a slightly larger managed service business called KISS Technology. We're basically Midlands based, but our focus is on the kind of on solutions, on the kind of three key areas for Microsoft at the moment. So Office 365 and SharePoint, Power BI and the Power Platform that includes the Power Apps and the newly named Power Automate. Used to be just called Flow. I guess it was kind of missing out on the Power prefix. And then also Dynamics 365. So what we're really to talk about is teamwork. So what we've really seen over the last few years is a real change in the way that teamwork has evolved in organizations. And this is both in the style of work and also the workforce itself. Both the styles of work and workforce are becoming a lot more diverse in the way that they're made up. So there is now becoming more of a movement towards transparency in organizations, and as such, we're seeing organization structures kind of flatten out. More people are being involved in a lot more teams, a lot more projects across an organization. But those teams are also really quite dynamic. So when we look at long-running projects, you get potentially a high sort of churn rate of team members. And inevitably, the first step when someone leaves a team is, well, we've got to go and trawl through all the emails and try and get the new person up to speed by saying, well, go read all these emails and try and piece together where we are in this project so that the new person is up to speed. Now, being on more teams has also led to a dramatic increase in the amount of collaboration. This is kind of a new way of work. It's team-based, it's collaborative. We're no longer working in silos and just being sort of driven by the tasks immediately in front of us. But teams are also increasingly becoming geo-distributed. We've got employees that are no longer in the same office, maybe not even the same time zone. So having face-to-face conversations with people is just becoming a lot more challenging. So it's really hard to try and maintain that kind of open dialogue within a project, and it's even more complicated because of the volume of information that gets thrown at us. There's no way we can attend every single meeting that we're invited to, so we really have to kind of pick and choose the high value bits and catch up on the rest. But the teams themselves are also becoming a lot more diverse. They're becoming a lot more diverse. So in terms of the people involved and the time zones and the companies, so that for the first time we're actually seeing sort of 5 generations now of people in the workplace. And this screenshot was taken from an Avanade blog from a couple of years ago, but even then we've got this kind of, we can see that certain demographics, certain age groups prefer to work in certain ways. So where we kind of move more towards a very conversational interface with the younger generations, where older generations are a lot more sort of have that preference for in-person, face-to-face meetings. So we've got these different groups of people, and they've all got different backgrounds, they've got different expectations around the tools that we use for collaboration. All these challenges really hinder the teamwork and really hinder the productivity. So for teams to really be at their very best and really sort of achieve as much as they can, every team member has got to feel included. We've got to have access to the information easily, and we've got to easily be able to participate in that collaborative process. But what really happens when we don't provide those tools to support our kind of new working style? Well, we end up with people splintering off. This is where the concept of shadow IT really comes into its own, because we see people going and I'll just use Dropbox over here, or maybe I'll use Trello for task management somewhere else. And now we've got to log into these different tools, but we haven't got the same organizational governance over any of those. We haven't got the same security policies that cover those. So we're introducing a bit of sort of risk into our operation in that way. So this is where Microsoft introduced the idea of Teams. So it was launched 2 years ago. It's actually the fastest growing business app in Microsoft history. They badge it as the hub for teamwork. Right? So it's used in over 500,000 Microsoft customers. The recent figures from Ignite actually put daily usage, or sorry, daily active users at 13 million. It's just a phenomenal number. On a weekly basis, then they're saying we've got 19 million users that interact with Teams. So huge volumes of people getting involved in Teams, being used in many countries, lots of different use cases for Teams. So what actually is it? Well, a lot of people say it's a competitor for Slack, but Microsoft's vision is a lot more than that. So if you're not familiar with Slack, Slack is a sort of high velocity chat chat application basically, but Teams is kind of more than that. It gives you that chat-based workspace, but it also brings together the kind of your meetings. We want to be able to meet sort of groups of people or have ad hoc meetings, or even do things like this. So this is a live event as a meeting driven through Teams. But we can also use Teams for calls. So you may have seen the announcement that Skype for Business is going away, and Microsoft Teams is the replacement for that. We can hook into on-premises PBX systems. We can use the Microsoft telephony offerings as well, but this is basically the replacement for your desk phone. We can also sort of have all of our Office 365 applications built in. So this is, how can I get to my recent files? How can I get to Planner? How can I sort of go and see my tasks? And also, how can I add in other applications, other software as a service applications that I use? We might legitimately want to use Trello, but I don't really want to have to remember a separate username and password for Trello. I'd rather have it integrated directly into Teams. Now, all of this is sort of available to us, and it's all built on the Microsoft's compliance and security sort of platform. So all of it is covered. It's we can apply policies around retention, around information sensitivity. So it's still secure, compliant, auditable. Then what Teams really presents is a kind of a boost in productivity, because what we normally see when we have to switch tasks regularly, it takes on average a minimum of 25 minutes to get refocused on what we were trying to do. So with work now being spread across multiple applications, trying to sort of switch applications and log in really disrupts that productivity. So this is why Teams really starts to bring it all together. So let's dive into a few of those key areas a little bit more. I mean, Teams really delivers on those kind of 4 core areas. So first, we've got Teams solving for the communication need of a business. We want a complete meetings and calling solution. So this is chats in a one-to-one basis. This is meetings sort of within groups or within really large groups, live events. You can have up to 10,000 users on a live event. But it's also your telephony solution. Now, because of the way Teams is structured, we can also have conversations in the context of the project or the topic that we want to discuss. So this enables us to keep files and the conversation about files in one single place. So then when it comes to the collaboration side of things, we've got really deep integration into Office 365 and all of the tools that the service provides. So if we're familiar with things like Word and Excel and PowerPoint, all of those can be easily used from within Teams. So again, we're kind of bringing those authoring tools directly into a single user experience. But we can also then leverage other services. Like I said, we can go and jump out and look at tweets in Twitter if we wanted to. We can customize the environment so that we can add in tabs that are relevant to us. So I might want to see the tweets to do with Circyl within a particular marketing channel, or I might want to have a connector that connects out to an RSS feed, maybe delivering me the most recent Teams news and developments from Ignite. But we can also have bots. Now, if you're not familiar with bots, bots are kind of those auto attendants, those conversational chatbots you're seeing on commercial websites where someone will pop up. So, oh, hey, can I help you? What are you looking for? And you sort of have that text-based conversation with them. They provide suggestions. Well, we can start to build those directly into Teams as well. Microsoft provide this really extensible platform so we can build our own business solutions that integrate directly into Teams. So a hugely powerful platform, very extensible. But it's also available on multiple devices. Now, the demo I'm going to show you is purely web-based. So because I'm running the event out of my own Microsoft Teams client application on my desktop, it's going to be a little bit awkward to sort of switch between the two. So everything I'm going to show you is in the web. If we can do it in the web, we can do it in the client. If we can do it in the client, we can also actually do it on the mobile as well. So the mobile application is available for iOS and for Android. Works on tablets, works on phones. Really easy to use. Makes sort of calls and joining meetings like really easy now. Let's have a little look. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll talk you through the main areas of Teams, and then we'll actually go into creating a team and have a look at that experience. Okay? So first off, working down from the very top, we've got this search bar. So I want to go and find documents within Teams, or I want to find conversations about a particular topic. But also what we can do here, we've got commands that we can use. We can use these / commands to say, well, okay, like what's new? So tell me what's new within Teams at the moment. And that's going to take us off to the help page that explains what's going on and how we can use the environment. We can also do @mentions. So just in the same way as Twitter, I can @mention a person or a group, but we can also @mention certain key pieces of functionality. So praise, I want to praise somebody for doing a good job, or I want to at YouTube to search for videos within the YouTube app. So if I want to sort of speak to my colleague Joe, I can @ Joe, put in the message and send it straight from the search bar. Now down the left hand side, if I start with activity on this left hand rail, what I can see is that here is everything that I've missed. So these are things that have happened within different teams or different channels that I'm involved in. So when we think about the style of work that we're involved in more and more projects, this is a really good way of being able to keep up to date with everything that's going on. We can then use this little filter on the right hand side to say, well, actually, can you just show me things where I've been mentioned? So then that will give me all of those @ mentions for me. I can then also switch over to see, well, just show me my activities. So things that I've done where I've sort of replied to something or been involved within a particular team. So continuing down the left hand side, we can then look at chat. So where we have Skype for Business on premises at the moment, or if you're still using Skype for Business in Office 365, you'll be kind of used to this a little bit, but chat in Microsoft Teams adds a little bit more. So I want to be able to have a conversation with somebody, and this is just a one-to-one conversation, or I can add multiple people into a conversation and still have that multi-party conversation going on. And when I'm typing an answer to a question, we've got various options here. We can go and use emojis within the conversation. We can go and use GIFs. We can use stickers. We can also go and write slightly larger responses. So you can use this for news announcements within a large team, for example, where I don't just want to write a one-line reply. I want to provide a bit more context. I want to provide some styling, make it look visually appealing, things like that. So we can do that within chat. Now, this particular person, in inverted commas, that I'm talking to here is actually a chat bot. So what we can say to our chat bot is, okay, so and then who is the manager of, who reports to. So let's say I've already picked on Jason once, so who reports to Jason. And the who bot is going to go away and look at Office 365 and say, well, who do you mean? So it's looking at the directory within Office 365, and then it's coming back with some with answers to that. So if you think about telephone directories that pretty much every organization has in some form or another, that's great for finding contact details. But what about a skills directory? So who knows about something? So who knows about Power BI? So I'll go and let WhoBot go and find that out. So it will come back and let me know who's been talking about Power BI within the organization. So really useful to sort of integrate bots in. WhoBot, as it happens, is a free one. If you're using Teams today, go and have a look at the app so you can add it in. There's also another bot, actually I'm not sure if it's still there. There was certainly a bot called T-Bot, which was the Teams bot to help answer questions. But I'm not sure, they've kind of replaced it with the help. Anyway, carrying on down, we've then got the real sort of core of the product. So my teams, groups of people that I'm involved in. Now these are collaborative groups of people on the whole. These are projects. These are, in our scenario, they're typically customers or partners that we are working with. And then we've got different channels here. So think of channels a bit like topics, or if it was to do with marketing, these could be different events. So if I'm in, let's see, so within this particular channel, I can now go and have a look at the files associated to this channel. So all files are stored in SharePoint. If we're doing a one-to-one chat, the files that you upload as part of that one-to-one chat are actually stored in your own personal OneDrive for Business. So just be aware of that. But across the top here, we've got other resources that we can pin into each channel. So I want to have a look at, well, what are the projects? What tasks have we got on? So this is going off to Planner, and it's automatically signing me in, and it's going to get some information come back. Or I could go and have a look at what we've got in our notebook, because every time you create a team, you also get OneNote that goes along with it. So we can go and have a look at sort of the notes associated with that particular team. But we can then go and pin whatever else suits our collaborative need for this project. So this doesn't have to be Microsoft products. There are there's going on hundreds of third parties that, as long as we've got a license to, as long as we can log into them, we can add those in as a tab within our channel. Just to point out that there are actually different types of teams as well. What we have up here, let's see, excuse me. No. So we've got channels that are teams that are private, but then we've also got public teams, and there's a third type at the moment, which is an organizational team. So this Circyl team is actually for everybody in the whole organization. Everybody in Circyl is automatically enrolled, if you like, or automatically a member of the Circyl Limited team. Every other team, you have to manage the membership of that team as a team owner. But the organizational team is there for companies that have less than 5,000 people. We're going to set one of these up. You have as many channels as you like, and that can become your conversational platform that goes across the whole organization. So carrying on down the left-hand rail, because Teams is so deeply integrated into all of the Office 365 products, I can go and have a look at my calendar. I can go and have a look at the events that I've got going on, or I can say, actually, I need to go and create a new meeting directly from within Teams. So this is where we could say, well, actually, I want to create a new live event. I want to do a webinar like this. Or I just want a new meeting, and I want to go and invite certain people in, and this goes off to your directory, looks at those people and invites them in. If I want this meeting to be in the context of a particular topic, a particular channel, I can then go and have a look and say, well, we've got a conversation about adoption that we need to have, so let's meet within that channel. That allows people to then go back and look at that meeting at a later date, because we can optionally say, well, I want to record this meeting. In the same way that this live event is being recorded, you can also record your internal meetings through Teams, and they're actually stored within Stream. So if you're not aware of Stream, Stream is what was Office 365 video, but Stream allows you to record video on your phone, allows you to record video through a Teams meeting, through a Yammer live event as well, and all of those videos, subject to your licensing subscription, cannot be automatically transcribed. So a video can now become text searchable. You can also have a timeline of who is actually presenting if you're using video. So show me where Michael starts to talk, or show me where Jason starts to talk in this. So very powerful sort of add-on service to present videos out to your organization. Continuing down, we've got our calls options. So internally at Circyl, we don't connect Teams out to a PBX and into a phone system. We only use the voice over IP sort of elements of calls. So internal calls go directly through Teams. If we're actually doing meetings, sorry, there is a slight caveat to it. With meetings, you can have an audio conference license. So if I've set up a team meeting with myself and a customer and they need to dial in, that's what the audio conference license is there for. It gives you a phone number that directly connects to your meeting. It's only a small amount, it's about £3 per user per month, something like that. Whereas the phone system from Microsoft is more expensive. You also have the ability to connect to your on-premises phone environment as well, if you wanted to. Now, Teams wouldn't be complete if we didn't have a way of looking at all of the files. So this goes and gets all of the files that I've worked on recently, regardless of where they're actually stored. So anywhere in my SharePoint environment or anywhere in Teams where I've worked on a file, I can come here and easily locate it. It's also going to go and pull in files from OneDrive as well. So my own personal OneDrive, and it will give me all of those files and folders so I can quickly navigate to content and that. Now the last part is really the kind of the extensible part of Teams. So here we've got some applications that we use more regularly, like Planner for task management, that WhoBot that I showed you. But we can then go and add in some other applications that I use on a regular basis. So if we've got a license for Trello, or if we use Smartsheets for task management, go and add that in, allow people to use that. As an administrator, we can go in and actually add additional apps immediately onto this left-hand rail. So I could add Trello as a shortcut onto there, or I can add Yammer or Dynamics if you use Dynamics into that left-hand rail. So let's go back and just say, well, I want to create a new team. So we've got a few options. If you think there's already a team, or you've been sent a code to join a private team, I can enter that in and then I'll go and join that private team. If I want to create a brand new team, well, now I can go and build it from scratch if I want to, or I can actually say, well, go and clone an existing team or an Office 365 group. So if I want to go and have a look at an existing team and say, well, I want something exactly the same. What we've done in our environment is actually create a template customer team. So every time we create one for a customer, it's always going to be the same. So if I go back and say, well, just build one from scratch. Now, do I want it to be searchable so anybody can join it? Do I really want it to be private and let people request for permissions? We can actually make private teams completely invisible to everybody else, or I want to set up an organization-wide team. So I'm just going to set up a public team, give it a name, give it a description, and here we've got some of the governance settings that I'm going to talk about in a minute. This is what sort of information is going to be stored here. Because from a governance perspective, you're going to have teams that are internal business. You're going to have conversational, social teams. Excuse me. You're also going to have potentially client or sensitive teams that are in there. So you can define your own classifications. Excuse me. And to define those classifications and also to control who can actually create teams, you do need an Active Directory Premium Plan 1 license. So you're a little bit restricted if you haven't got that as to what you can do from a governance perspective in some respects. But if I want to go and create this team, it's going to go and spin up my team. It's going to say, do you want to add anybody else into your team? So yeah, sure, I'll go and pick on Joe and Jason. I'll say add them in. Now at this point I can say, well, what level of permissions do I want these people to have? Because in Teams you've got two levels. You've got owners and you have members. As an owner, I can control anything about this team. As a member, I work within the bounds, the permissions, well, the configuration rather, that the owners have set. So I can say, well, actually, I want Jason to be an owner here and help me out when I'm on holiday, and then I'll close that. So that's my team created. So over here, I can now see my team's demo. I've got a general team, I've got some conversations, I've got some files, and I've got a wiki if I want to contribute to a wiki. Now, the thing to be really clear on here is that Teams is built on top of Office 365 groups. So an Office 365 group is a security construct that it basically provisions all of the services you might need as a group of people working on a project. So I've created one team, but in the background, it's created a shared mailbox for me and a calendar. I've got a SharePoint site. I've got a planner for task management. I could get it to set up a streams channel for me as well. All of these assets are sitting behind the scenes. This isn't a question of saying we're not going to use SharePoint, we're only going to use Teams, because you are using SharePoint. SharePoint is Microsoft's storage platform for Office 365. There'll be no getting away from it, unfortunately. So it is there in the background. And when I go and say, well, go and open SharePoint for my new Teams demo team, I'm going to see a SharePoint experience. And what we actually get is every channel is a new folder within a document library. So that's kind of the way things are created. But it's just to be aware for people, because I've been with customers where they've created SharePoint sites, they've then created teams using the same name, but that's created an entirely different SharePoint site. So we've got to be very careful on how we roll these things out, and we'll get onto that shortly. So let's skip back to the deck. So you may be aware that Microsoft are having their annual Ignite conference. It's where are we, Thursday? It's almost coming to an end, actually. Well, give or take a few hours because of the time zone. But the interesting things that have been announced from a user perspective are things that people have been asking for a long time. So the idea of a private channel. You'll be able to set up a new channel and allocate a subset of the team to actually work within that channel. So if you think about a large department, you might have a team for that department, but you just want the team leads to have an area where they can store and discuss things within that. So that's where a private channel will come in. You'll get a little padlock to the side of the channel name so you know that it's private. Interestingly, in the background, it creates a brand new SharePoint site just for that private channel, so they can guarantee that the audience and the permissions are set only for those channel members. So again, this is one of the reasons why they've uplifted the maximum number of site collections you can have in the SharePoint environment. They've taken it from 500,000 to 2 million, because Teams is being so massively adopted and private channels has been requested for such a long time. They've also announced the idea of multi-window chats. So if I'm having conversations with multiple different people, I can now actually pop those windows out, like you do with Skype. We could say, well, I have different things, different chats going on, but still be involved in a meeting as well. They've talked about embedded task management as well this week, where on that left-hand rail, it's not just a connection directly into Planner, it's actually a connection into a product called To Do, which you get as part of Office 365. So To Do is there for personal task management, but it's going to synchronize all of your tasks from Outlook, your Outlook tasks. It's going to synchronize Planner tasks associated with all of your teams that you're involved in, so that you can see when you've been assigned things, it'll just be there within Teams, within those tasks. You can then start to change how you look at your teams by change it to be lists or by a board or chart. They're also embedding the Yammer app directly into Teams. It's an optional thing. We can take it out if we want, but for me, it's a little bit strange. I get why they're doing it. Yammer is there for company-wide conversations rather than project-based conversations. So that's why it's there. But it's only really for organizations that are going to have more than 5,000 users. Because why would you want to try and maintain Yammer as well as trying to maintain Teams if you're quite a small organization? So just kind of for awareness on that. In an interesting move, they are integrating Outlook even further. So I can have an email coming from a customer with some information. I can send that email into Teams for internal discussion rather than doing it in Outlook. And then when I'm ready to formulate a reply, I can basically send the chat back to Outlook. And so send it as an email directly from Teams effectively. So it's really tying the products even closer together. They've also announced that some new meeting features are coming. These are mainly around partnerships with the likes of Cisco and Zoom. The interesting one was if we've got a Cisco like WebEx or a Zoom meeting, we can actually join directly from Teams is where they're trying to work towards. There's also new devices for Teams, team meetings being announced. So the idea of a collaboration bar, I was talking to a customer about them yesterday. If you want to, if you've already spent on large TVs to use within meetings, these collaboration bars could be great because they basically sit on top, kind of like a large webcam, but it's got the speakers built in, it's got sort of directional cameras, so it turns a room with a TV into a proper Teams meeting room without the really expensive Teams meeting equipment that is normally associated with that. And the other thing that's coming, highly anticipated for Teams meetings, you can now choose a background image. So at the moment, if you're having a video chat with somebody, you can blur the background. I'm sure everyone remembers that BBC interview where the child comes running in. You can blur out the background so no one can see the mess of your office. But now you can choose to have a nice, pretty background, look like you're working on the beach or somewhere more exotic. They also announced a whole bunch of admin controls. There's some more features specifically aligned to first line workers and some interesting industry specific scenarios around healthcare where we can schedule consultations sort of with members of the public directly through Teams. So for all of those announcements, have a little look at that URL on techcommunity.microsoft.com. There's loads of information on Tech Community, and if you have a look at the Teams blog, it goes into a lot more detail than I've got time for right now. So as we saw earlier, creating a team is really easy. A few clicks and it's there and it's up and running. But we've kind of been there before. I'm a SharePoint consultant by trade and worked in SharePoint for many years. Now, I've seen so many SharePoint deployments that got out of control because there wasn't any governance. We've also seen systems that were never truly adopted in the way we thought they would, and we've spent thousands, hundreds, millions on trying to get it right, and it just never worked. And we've also seen those spot solutions, and they've ended up causing more problems than they've actually solved. So the Microsoft hype is get in there, get started, but I'd say, you know what, take a step back. Let's get this one right. So before you really turn it on and let everyone kind of dive in and create teams and go through all that, let's have a little chat about some of the prerequisites, some of the governance, some of the change management that you need to kind of consider as an organization. So Microsoft wants us to adopt their cloud technologies. They want people to get involved and truly use it. A lot of the product heads are actually targeted on adoption rather than the kind of the sales numbers. So it's in their best interest for everybody to sort of go and use it, get involved in this kind of better secure environment. It's evergreen software. But because it's evergreen, that also presents some challenges. So the technology generally is easy. The change management is where people come in, so that's going to slow things down if it's not well managed. Anyone in charge of an Office 365 tenant needs to really understand how Microsoft behaves when it's driving their Office products forwards, and how to manage the change inside this kind of ever-evolving environment. So we've really got to balance adoption and change management. That's really going to be quite difficult, but there's things we can do: regular training, have champions programs, take on feedback, have a really open process for feedback. Maybe use that company team within Teams to say, you know what, feedback, what do you like, what do you don't like, what don't you like, what works, what doesn't work. Really sort of encourage people to get involved, because if they're providing feedback, they're using Teams, and if they get used to doing that, well, great, half the battle's won. But we also see companies that think that Teams is easy. Microsoft say it's really easy. So we skip the education part. We don't really understand the art of the possible anymore. So if we don't understand the art of the possible, we're never going to use it to its full potential. We're always going to revert back to what we know. So I don't really understand how I share a file within Teams. So I'll just start a new email and attach it and send it to 5 people. Great, now we've got duplicated content in at least well, 7 places if you think about the original my inbox and the 5 people that I've sent it to. So let's look at how do we do training, but not just the initial onboarding of people or new starters, but continuous training. It's an evergreen platform. We need to continue make people aware in whatever way works for your organization that new features are constantly added. And if we take them on and we work with them, we can work more productively. We also have a lot of queries around, well, what do I use? When do I use certain features? Office 365 is a bit of it's a large toolbox. There's many things that do a lot of similar things. If you look at tasks, for example, you can go from the enterprise project, Microsoft project for task or program and project management, or you can come right down to do for personal task management. And there's other ways within SharePoint, within Outlook, within Planner. So what are we actually going to use within Office 365? Because if some people are using Skype for Business and some people are using Teams, unless we've got it configured properly, there's people think, well, no one's talking to me. I'm asking questions in Skype and everyone else is talking in Teams. So we need to understand as an organization, what are we going to use fundamentally, and turn off the things that we're not going to use. So understand the use cases for each of the apps that Microsoft provide within Office 365. And if it makes sense, embed them into Teams, make it easy for people to use those, but turn off the stuff we're not going to use. If we don't, we're just going to end up with some really confused users. I don't understand what to use when, and we end up reverting back to what we know. Now, this is a big one for me. This is the kind of being burnt in SharePoint so many times when you put an environment out there and you say, yeah, everybody can go and create a site, and before you know it, you've got this kind of site sprawl everywhere. And well, which site is for whom? Who owns that? And what's the purpose of this particular site? Now, this is made slightly worse within Teams, because if everyone's allowed to create teams, well, like I said, we're actually creating Office 365 groups. We're not just creating SharePoint sites, we're creating calendars and mailboxes and planner plans and all these other assets across the platform. So really, we want to avoid this situation where we've got multiple teams basically for the same people, or teams for potentially fixed groups where we've accidentally excluded people. In the end, we're just going to end up with duplication of content. We're going to end up with user confusion. We're just going to lose the adoption battle again. So we'd say, you know what, go and pre-create the Microsoft Teams that make sense in your organization. If you're going to align it to departments, go pre-create those so people don't have to. That way you can say, once I've created it, we can associate it to the SharePoint site that they're used to. So now everything's in one place. But also look at, well, how can I create teams as part of my business process? So for us in Circle, we drive everything through Dynamic CRM. Now, that starts as a sales pipeline, but once a sales opportunity has been closed and it's been won, that becomes a project in Dynamics. Now, we've got a logic app in the background that then picks that up and says, ah, you need a Microsoft Team for this because it's a new customer with a new project. So it goes and uses that template that I sort of highlighted earlier in the demo to go and create a brand new team for that customer, and it then creates a project in a predefined naming sort of strategy that aligns to the project that we're working on. So in this way, the team is already there. When the people want to start working on the project, it's there. There's no confusion. I can search for a project number and go and find it. For those ad hoc collaborations, you need a mechanism to cover for those. So maybe we're running an event with a partner, or it's a new partner and need to go and create a new team. So what's the request process? Understand, make people aware that we're not going to let everybody go and create teams willy-nilly because there'll be chaos. But if you fill out this form and it makes sense for the team, then fine. If it doesn't make sense, then we need to have the conversation with the business user to explain there's already a team here. Maybe you just need to request access to this team. So it's kind of understanding the use cases within your environment, within your organization, and then building a governance strategy around the creation of that. Now, at the moment, we'll have a lot of organizations that are heavily invested in Skype for Business, whether that's because they've got it on premises, maybe it's hybrid, maybe it is their telephony solution. So Microsoft have provided these kind of parallel running operational modes for Teams and for Skype. So we can predominantly have meetings just in Teams at the moment, but not the collaboration elements, or we just want to stick with Skype for Business at the moment. One of the dangerous ones around that is the islands. So I can basically have both up and running. I can have my Skype for Business window and a Teams chat window. Now, the problem here is, well, some people might start a conversation off in Skype for Business and it goes unanswered for a long time, whereas I might be asking the same sort of question to the same person in Teams, but because they're not using it, that goes unanswered. So have a look at the different upgrade mode options that are available. So really try and avoid using islands if possible, but every situation is slightly different depending on the technology you've already got deployed. Another biggie is not having Exchange Online. Now, typically, if an organization is moving to the cloud and going to Office 365, then Exchange Online is normally the first workload that gets migrated. But because Teams relies so heavily on core applications such as Exchange, without that, well, we're not going to have calendars. We're not going to be able to schedule meetings. So that, to an end user, now looks like this product just doesn't work properly. I'm clicking on calendars and nothing's coming up. So if you're not ready to fully move to Exchange Online, have a look at the hybrid options. So keep your Exchange on premises, but deploy a hybrid environment that extends into Office 365. Alternatively, yeah, migrate some of your mailboxes for maybe your proof of concept users that want to use Teams, migrate those guys over to Exchange Online. In a similar vein, if we're not in SharePoint Online, then it's also not going to work as expected. Like I said earlier, if we're having a one-to-one chat and we upload a file, that goes to OneDrive for Business. If we upload a file to a channel as part of a team, that goes to the SharePoint site, the document library, and the folder within that document library associated to the channel. So if we're not bringing together the files and the chat, we're going to end up with duplicated content. We're going to end up with a less efficient sort of way of collaborating within the business. Now, this isn't exactly a blocker for Teams deployment, but if we want to really ensure that people can work on the files that they're used to working on when they're disconnected from from the internet or from any form of Wi-Fi, then we really need to have OneDrive for Business files on demand available to us. So what we can do with OneDrive for Business, and to point out fairly ropey sort of naming convention from Microsoft, but we've got OneDrive for Business as in the cloud storage, personal file storage for us, but we've also got OneDrive for Business client application that's installed on laptops. And it's that OneDrive for Business that I'm referring to. So that has this capability of being able to download a file on demand from the cloud to your laptop when you try and open it. Now, before build 1703, you would have to choose which folders you wanted to sync. And OneDrive would quite happily go and synchronize all of that content from those selected folders onto your laptop. That's a little bit of a problem if you've got a fairly small hard disk on a laptop, when SharePoint sites can hold up to 25 terabytes. So we needed a much better way of being able to store files directly down onto the laptop. Now also OneDrive, sorry, not OneDrive, Windows 10 has something called Storage Sense built into Windows 10. And this can be configured to release the disk space of files that have not been used for a long time. So if I've downloaded something, not used it for 6 months, it can be automatically released back up to the cloud. This one's an interesting one, and I've had this with a few customers, where we'll set up a meeting, and then the equipment being used is normally like it's an iPhone sort of set of headphones, or the headphones that I've sort of got from whatever music I've been listening to earlier in the day. Some of them are okay, but you typically end up with a lot of background noise that goes on, particularly in an open office. Microsoft have also got a whole load of different devices that can help change a simple meeting room into a video conference meeting room. And as I said earlier, we've got the kind of different kinds of equipment that we can use. These collaboration bars that they've just announced, that sort of good, or we've got speakerphones from the likes of Jabra or Plantronics that we can use to have audio calls within Teams. But don't underestimate the value in providing people with the right equipment. If we haven't got the right equipment, we're going to have a bad experience in meetings. We're going to avoid doing a Teams meeting because I keep having to repeat myself because people can't hear what I'm saying. There's too much background noise, or my headphones feel really uncomfortable after sort of been sitting on a call for an hour. So have a look at the certified audio devices, have a look at the meeting equipment that the Microsoft have got in their store. So excuse me, Microsoft Teams and Office 365 share basically the same common planning, deployment and adoption best practices. So we need to gather our people together. We've got to assemble a group of individuals within the business and within IT. You can't make decisions on how a whole business is going to deploy Teams from the IT department. It will not work. So in smaller organizations, this might just be 2 or 3 people, but you've got to make sure that the business is working together with IT. Then we've got to look at, well, let's prioritize some of our scenarios. Let's use that as the test bed to make sure that this really works for us. So we've got to enable the communication. We've got to enable the collaboration, and really prioritize the work using relevant business scenarios that will really kind of resonate with the business users, instead of just talking about the features and functions. I'm a techie. I get carried away with features and functions rather than business value and what's it actually going to mean to your working day, things like that. So then we've got to be careful. We've got to look at the technical planning side of things. At the moment, you might say, well, our network's fine. Well, what happens when the 100 people in that office now start all doing video calls? What's that going to have on, what sort of effects going to have on your network? People aren't going to be receiving email as regularly. Maybe core systems don't respond as fast. We've also got to look at, well, what sort of information sensitivity or retention labels are going to go on our data. And also, do we want external people to participate in our internal teams? Which can absolutely do. I'm involved in teams with Microsoft and with customers where I sign in with my Circyl email address, but I get access to their environment and I work with them in their environment on their content. The fourth stage is really look at sort of doing pilots before really sort of going with that broad rollout across the whole organization. It allows you to really fine tune the training material. It allows you to fine tune your communications material so that if you're rolling out to a kind of a friendly pilot group, it's like, give me all that feedback. You've got to be brutally honest here, because if it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, it's certainly not going to work for the other people in the organization. And then the last step is, don't just push it out there and hope for the best. It's like, let's actually go and sort of look at the usage. There's reporting within Office 365 so we can see exactly how the environment is being used. Is it being used in one office more than another? Well, what's the reason for that? Have we got a lower bandwidth there and we haven't sort of factored that into our technical planning? But also capture feedback from people. Like I said, use channels within Teams to capture feedback. Push forms out from Microsoft Forms to say, tell it, if you want to be anonymous, that's fine. Tell us what you think. How can we improve this? But then also use your champions. Have power users or champions that can go out to the business, and maybe they've got a better level of training than everybody else, but really nurture that champions network. Highlight the wins, reward employees for embracing the new tools and or using them in innovative ways, whatever it is, because if people can see that, oh, the first person to post a message in Teams, I don't know, got another day's holiday or something, other people are going to say, well, what's next? What happens if I keep using it? What's the next milestone maybe? One of the things you could talk about is gamification. So how, if I use this more, is there a level up? Do I get a week's holiday? I don't know. I hope Jason's listening. So that's really how we can get started with Teams. Microsoft say it's really easy, but I'd just say pause a little bit. Consider the governance, consider planning and how you would actually sort of work with it. Like I said, I will be sending out the link to this webinar. But if you'd like to get in touch, use my email address that's on the, what was it, second, third slide, whatever it is, or you can get hold of us at inquiries@circyl.co.uk. Take a look at the website as well. That's got a bunch of information about other offerings that we have. I think we're going to do another webinar in a couple of months that's going to cover everything in an Office 365 E3 license. So watch out for the emails about that one when they come through. Let's have a little look. Right. So someone asked, okay, how do you move a file okay, from one team to another? Okay, so you're going to have access to both teams in order to do this. Where's my environment? Okay, so if I want to take let me go create a new Word document. Oh. Now, what we're seeing here is Word Online embedded within Teams, so I don't have to go anywhere to have this to start working on this document. If I want to break out into the Word application, I can absolutely do that. But now I've got my very simple document. I've got a few options that I can do with it, so I can move it and copy it directly within this experience. If I need to do something else with it, I can open it into SharePoint, and as long as I've got access to the two teams, then I can move it and copy it in that way. So I want to go and move this somewhere else. So I'm in my channel, now I'm in the team, and if I go up a bit more, right, now I can see all the other teams that I'm involved in, so I can move that file in that way. But it relies on you having membership of the team that you need to move or copy that file to. Another announcement actually that I didn't put on there is that Microsoft are bringing the document library experience in SharePoint directly into Teams. So it will look the same. It doesn't matter if you're in Teams or in SharePoint, it will look the same and it will behave the same. And to answer Patricia's question on how do you share a document, wish I hadn't moved it now, I could have copied it, but the sharing experience that you see in the rest of Office 365, so if you go to if you're within Word and you want to try and share it, you get a little sort of dialogue that pops up, or if you're in SharePoint, you get the same dialogue. Well, that's what's coming to Teams here as well. If I want to share this, I can share it within the team by just saying get a link and posting it into the conversation. But what we will see quite soon, I'll just go into SharePoint. Right, is that when I select a document, catch up, and click on the share icon for it, I'm going to get this little dialogue that pops up, and this will give me a number of sharing options. Do I want to share it just as a view link? Do I want the person to be able to edit it? Do I want to expire the link and things like that? So I want to, let's see, I want to allow editing, and I want to block the download of a particular file, things like that. So let's say, so I can apply those, and then I can just type in a person's name, put a message in, and then share it in that way, or directly within Outlook. That experience is coming directly into Teams now. So watch out for that one, coming soon. Right. I'll hold on for a few more minutes. I realise I'm out of time. You will get the link to this, and you're able to go back and rewatch the webinar through this link. If you have any other further questions, please get in touch through the inquiries at circyl.co.uk email address, or get hold of us directly on through Twitter, through LinkedIn, or whichever social media platform of choice. But yeah, hopefully speak to you again in a couple of months' time. Thank you.